craft with me while I tell you the story of how I found out I was raped at 2 years old. Today, we've already finished the stars in the background of the stocking, and right now we're going to be doing these green sequins on the back. And last time I talked about the actual time a year ago where I recovered a repressed memory that led me to talk to my brother who was forced to witness my child sexual assault. And so that's how I found out about my rape. And today I was thinking that I could talk more about the immediate aftermath of finding that out about a year ago. So, to set the scene, like I'm in my early 30s, I'm in my first few years working as a lawyer. And thankfully, my firm has been really understanding. Like, before this incident happened last year, I also had really debilitating migraines. Actually, for 2 years, I had those, and they were already accommodating with those. And so when this came up, they kind of understood that the migraines and this underlying trauma kind of can go hand in hand. And so the day I recovered my repressed memory of my abuser's bedroom, it was a Monday night. And that next Tuesday, I actually couldn't call off of work. I had to go because of just pre-scheduled things with clients. So what happened was Monday night, I immediately emailed my therapist and I was like, "Do you have time for an emergency session tomorrow? Something happened." And thankfully, she was able to fit me in that Tuesday morning. So I attended, and I attend therapy through Zoom. So I told her that I discovered I repressed memories of my abuser's bedroom, and I was just really freaked out. And she helped me, like, sit with that and kind of calm down. And then that afternoon, I actually had to drive like an hour away into the city to help a client shut down their restaurant, meaning help them like lay off their entire staff and present them severance agreements and all of that. And so I was there the entire rest of the day, but I was very much, in my own headspace. It was kind of nice that I was there because it was distracting and I was like putting together like the paperwork for them, so it was something to do with my hands, but it was also just really hard to put up a front, especially in front of a client and in front of all of these people who, are having a bad thing happen to them. It was hard for me to kind of act like nothing was happening with me as well. And so I thought, well, at least I have like the hour drive to the restaurant and I have like the hour drive back to kind of be on my own and work through my feelings. And one thing I like to do when I'm working through big feelings is sing, and especially sing like Broadway like musicals or just like really sad songs. And so I was really looking forward to just belting those out. But what happens instead is my boss calls me and he says, "We're going to investigate an alleged like harassment, like a different client's harassment claim. We're going to call employees and we're going to interview them. And you're just going to sit in on that while you're driving. And then we're going to call the client, see what they want to do." And so the entire 2 hours commute, I'm investigating harassment. And then for 4 hours, I'm getting yelled at by people who are upset with me that they are losing their jobs. And so it was not a good way to spend the day after this really emotional thing happened. But I got through it, went home, and just slept, I guess. Then Wednesday, I feel like I was probably just like in denial that this discovery would affect me, change my life, change anything. And so I just went into work. Usually I work from home, but my work likes for us to go into the office like twice a week. And so usually I would go in on Wednesdays and Fridays. So that Wednesday, I went into the office and I was just trying to work, but immediately I was distracted. I couldn't focus on anything. And I told my coworker who was in the room with me exactly like, well, not exactly, but I told her what happened Monday night. She was very understanding. And it got to the point in the day where I just knew I couldn't focus and I knew I needed to tell my bosses what was going on with me. So, at the very least, they could be aware that I had my mind on something else. And so I ended up telling the managing partner of my firm and then another partner who I work like directly under. And maybe I gave them too much information, but I basically said that I was a victim of child sexual abuse and that on Monday night I discovered that the abuse was much worse than I ever thought it was. And I don't I don't think they knew how to react, and that is very fair and very valid. I don't think many people know how to react. But yeah, my bosses were understanding about like any time I would need to take off. I decided to take that Thursday and Friday off. And in my mind too, I just felt like I needed to go somewhere, like I needed to leave and get out. Um, so I was just like looking into little getaways like an hour away from where I live. And actually, one of my bosses offered me concert tickets for that Wednesday night. Um, it it did seem like pity tickets, but it was for an artist that I liked, and they were tickets he already had. He couldn't go to because his girlfriend ended up getting sick, so they weren't gonna go. No one was buying them, and so he gave me these like pity concert tickets, which was really nice. It actually was a really great distraction for that night. And so my fiance and I went to a concert that Wednesday night, and then Thursday I just remember just kind of not being there. Like I just feel like I was like zoned out, not paying attention to anything and not really doing anything. And then Friday was the day that I had scheduled to talk to my brother about what he had remembered. And so I was really, really anxious that day. And I went and I got running shoes. I had been getting into running slightly and I had signed up for like a 10K, and it was like that day that I was just like, well, we're gonna go buy running shoes. I ended up buying an Apple Watch. I think in my last video I mentioned how I just spent a lot of money this day. And it was like partly anxiety and partly just like, I guess something that I could control in that situation was buying these things to help me cope. So, running, exercise, good for your mental health. I bought like a weighted stuffed animal who I love. I bought just things that like smelled nice, painting things, things to do like arts and crafts. Obviously, I like arts and crafts. And so that Friday night is when I talked to my brother and when he confirmed to me that I was sexually assaulted when I was 1 or 2 years old, and he knows because he witnessed it. He carries a lot of guilt for not doing anything to prevent it. But he was also a child. Like, he was younger than my cousin. Like, he didn't have any power in the situation. Like, I don't think there was anything he could do as a child to stop that. And I just, I'm really upset that he carries that guilt, but I can't change that either. And so he told me the story. I thanked him, and then I just kind of journaled for basically hours, like working my way through all of my feelings for this. And like I mentioned in my last video too, it didn't really hit me until a few hours later exactly what the implications were, what my brother said happened. It wasn't until much later that I was like, oh, that was rape. Because when I first heard it and first journaled about it, I was very like clear in the fact that it was forced oral sex, but it didn't click in my mind that, forced sex is rape. Like it's not sex. So it was just a whole process with that. And then that night specifically was really, really hard to sleep. Like, I think maybe I only got a few hours of sleep. It took me a really, really long time to be able to get to sleep. And then once I did, like, I still just woke up really early. And I also just, like, was so caught up in my head about my family. And I think it was just like really complicated situation that I'm happy to go more into, but I was just so mad at my family, like mostly the people who were adults when we were kids, and also family members who in recent years like have questioned my allegations of abuse by my cousin and who like denied it or who um what's the word who like backed my cousin basically. And I was just getting really mad because before this information I was like, okay, it's really questionable if these things that I remember were abuse, and they could also be excused as like kids just being curious and maybe he like overstepped a boundary, but maybe he didn't know. But once I learned about, raping a 2-year-old, that really crosses the line and it's not questionable anymore. It's crazy. It's a crazy thing to defend and it's a crazy thing to question. And it just made me really, really angry at my family that if anyone knew that this happened and still defended my cousin, I was pissed at them basically. So I couldn't sleep that Friday night. I was very, very angry and I also was just like still just a lot of grief that I think I was like dissociating from. So I wasn't fully feeling the grief, but I was just like numbing myself so that I wouldn't feel it. And so that Saturday, I woke up early to call my brother and ask him, like, exactly who in the family knew or knows that I was assaulted at 2 years old. Because if they knew and they were still basically not supporting me, I thought that that was ridiculous. Um, but he also didn't seem sure. Things unraveled in my family in a really weird way, and then it just kind of got swept under the rug. So he just, in the end, didn't know. So I kind of moved on, and that weekend I planned a small trip so that we could go by like stay at a hotel by a body of water. I find water like really soothing and calming. I think a lot of people do. And so I just thought getting out of the space we were in would be a nice change and a nice distraction. And so that's what we did. And sure enough, like sleeping in the hotel bed, like actually made me sleep that night, that Saturday night. And Sunday morning, we got like a nice breakfast by the water, and it was, on the one hand, really nice, and also just really numb. Like, I just like felt really numb. And while we were away, actually, my fiance and I got back our engagement shoot photos, which were really, really sweet to look at. It would just like felt like such a weird time to be going through those. Like, those were such a happy thing, and I felt like I was in such a not happy place. And so we spent the weekend away. I think Monday was also a holiday because I think we didn't have to go back until Monday. And then Monday also was the day that I felt I needed to tell my best friend and also my mom what was going on and what exactly my brother said happened to me. And that was really, really hard. It's still a year later hard to tell people what happened to me. It's gotten a lot easier over the months and like all of the times that I've had to tell people. But those initial two times were, I think, the hardest to get out, especially to people who care about me so much. And I think telling my best friend it was really nice because I know that like she just like cares about me and wants to support me. But telling my mom was like more complicated because she and I have a more complicated relationship where I was like very parentified as a kid, and so I took on the responsibility of like managing her emotions. And so I was afraid of telling her that this happened to me because I was afraid it would be too much for her. It would be too sad. She would feel like she had failed me. She would feel so upset that this happened to me. So there's just this extra layer of worry and just difficulty in telling my mom. I used to have this problem a lot in my early days of going to therapy or like seeing mental health professionals, where I would know the answer to their question in my head, but it just like physically felt like I could not get the words out. And that's what it felt like when I had to tell my mom what happened. It felt like a fight to get the words out. And my mom actually handled it a lot better than I thought she would. I think in the moment, I feel like she maybe needed like time to process it because I can't exactly remember what she said to me on the phone, but I do know that she followed up with a text saying that she was so, so angry that he did this to me, but that she was going to take her cues from me, basically. Like, if I didn't want her to be angry, she wouldn't like go overboard. And because she said that she knows that it's about me because I'm the victim. And then she also offered, like, if I wanted her to cut off that cousin's family, like her sister, that she would. And that was really, really nice to hear because the first time things kind of came out in the family about my cousin abusing me was in 2016, and that time she was not. I think she's learned a lot since then about how to react because during the 2016 time, she definitely made it more about her and her feelings, and I kind of just got lost. And so this time she was very, very mindful and like just caring about me and what I wanted to do. And I mean, I did not know what I wanted to do, but it was really nice that she offered that. And then the long weekend was over, and I basically had to go back to work, which felt crazy. It just felt like my world had changed so much. It felt like the person I was before had completely died, and then I was just expected to, like normal, go back to work. And that's the thing about these life events, it's that they seem so big that the world stops for you, but the world does not actually stop. Life doesn't stop, it just keeps going. And I felt frozen in that place and like everything was moving on around me. And so I think that that's something I'm going to explore more in later videos where I just kind of take my time trying to go back to work, taking time off of work, just trying to get a grasp on reality in my life again because this time, immediately after finding this out, I think was the hardest time to get through. It felt like the aftermath of a wreck, and the wreck was my life, basically. It felt like a crumbling around me, but like a crumbling that only I knew about, or like me and like those closest to me. It just isn't as visible as someone who literally gets into a car wreck or like visibly is like physically hurt. These were all just deep emotional and psychological wounds that I was living through and trying to work through. So I think that's where I will wrap it up now. Thank you so much for listening again and watching again. And I'm very happy with my little sequins on the back of this stocking. I think we might just get this stocking done before Christmas, but we shall see.